So we're going to start with just a general overview of rational numbers and a review of absolute value. Does anyone remember with a hand what absolute value means? Sort of the mathematical definition.
The distance that it was from 0.
Very good. The distance that the number is from 0 on a number line. And absolute value becomes important when we're working with positive and negative numbers. So that's why we're doing a little refresher on absolute value. Okay? The distance between a number and 0 on a number line. We write absolute value with those two straight lines on either side. Usually there's a number inside it. So like this would mean the absolute value of 6. And what the lines mean is that how far is 6 from 0 on a number line? 6, right? Okay. Remember that absolute value always simplifies to a positive number because the distance is always a positive amount. The distance from one place to the other will be a positive number. So absolute value will simplify to a positive. Let's do a couple examples just to refresh our memory. The number line can be helpful for this because it can help you where numbers are and how far they are from 0. For example, this one says find the absolute value of -3. Okay, with a hand. Liam, it's 3. If we find -3 on our number line and we see that it is 1, 2, 3 units from 0, that means the absolute value of -3 is 3. Okay, we can also have absolute value of what are other rational numbers. 1 and 1/4. Hudson, what would be the absolute value of 1 and 1/4?
1 and 1/4.
Good. Okay, 1 and 1/4 would be right somewhere around here, right? We'd have a fourth, and we'd have one whole number. So from 0, this is also 1 and 1/4. What about the absolute value of 7? Modibo.
The absolute value of 7 is going to be 7.
Very good. It's also 7. We know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units from 0 is 7. And finally, with a decimal. What is the absolute value of -2.6? Mia?
2.6.
Good. Okay, -2.6 would be somewhere around here on our number line. That's 0.6 units. 1, 2. So positive 2.6. So notice how these all simplified to positive numbers. We're not doing opposites, we're doing absolute value. So distance from 0 will always be positive. Okay, part of this, and we've done this before, but we'll be comparing absolute value to maybe other absolute value or maybe to numbers that are not absolute value. So we're going to use, the number line will be helpful for this, and we're going to use our inequality symbols, less than, greater than, or equal to. So basically, it's asking us to plug in one of those inequality symbols, less than, greater than, or equal to. Remember, the mouth of that inequality symbol should open toward the larger number. Now, the best way to do this is to simplify your absolute value first and then get them into the same form. So either both fractions or both decimals. Okay? First of all, if we simplify, if I sort of graph -2.5 on my number line, which would be right here, what is the absolute value of -2.5? Liam? 2.5. If I graph 3 halves, that's the same as what? 1.5, right? So that's going to be about right here. 1.5. So the absolute value, or not even the absolute value, just the value of 3 halves is 1.5. Or as a decimal, what's 1.5 as a decimal? Okay. 1.5. Which one of these is greater than the absolute value of -2.5 or 1.5? Hudson? Good. The absolute value of negative 2.5 is bigger because that distance is bigger than 1.5. Okay? So simplify the absolute value first so that you can better compare the two numbers. A moon has an ocean under its icy surface. It says scientists run tests above and below the surface. And these are the results of the test. So this is how deep they ran each of the tests. So temperature at negative 3.8 miles, salinity at negative 5.15 miles, atmosphere at 0.3, organics at negative 4.5, and then a test for ice at negative 0.25. Here's what it asks. Which test is the deepest? So it will help to put this on a number line if you can't visualize it right now. Remember, we talked about this when we talked about absolute value. What does 0 represent? What does 0 represent?
Sea level.
Thank you, with a hand, but you're correct. 0 represents sea level. So negative numbers mean that these tests were run below the ocean or below the level of the water, right? So if we kind of plot each one, negative 3.8 is somewhere here. This is temperature. Negative 5.15 is down here somewhere. Salinity. What does salinity mean? Do you know? Drew? Saltiness, yeah. Atmosphere is at 0.3, so it's going to be right above the water. Organics at negative 4.5. And then ice at negative 0.25, so right here. Okay, so which test is run deepest in the water? Tate? Salinity. We can see this on our number line. How would you say that in terms of absolute value? Why is salinity the deepest? Modibo?
Salinity is the deepest because it's basically longer than any of the.
Yes. How would you say that in terms of absolute value? Drew?
It's the farthest away from 0.
It's the farthest away from 0, right? It has the greatest absolute value. And it is the farthest from 0 in a negative direction, right? So it's the deepest test. Which test is run closest to the surface? Which test is run closest to the surface of the water?
Wait.
Hudson, what do you think?
Atmosphere.
Atmosphere, how come?
Because
Is it the closest to 0? Tate, what do you think?
It's ice.
Ice, because?
Because it's negative 2.5 versus 0.3.
Right, so how far is ice away from 0? What is its absolute value?
0.25.
0.25. So it is 0.25 below the surface. How far above the surface is atmosphere? Modibo?
0.3.
0.3. So 0.25 is a little bit closer. It's underneath, but it's still closer to the surface, just in a negative direction. Does that make sense? So we're looking at that absolute value. So the closest to the surface, even though it's underwater, was the test for ice. Okay? Okay. Now, real quick, I'm going to put this on here. There is one check on tonight's homework, not 4. Okay? Because most of them ask you to, it's either yes or no, or it's greater than, less than, or equal to, or it's simply putting in the absolute value. So I don't think you need 4 checks for that. So I want you to use your checks wisely.